Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his notepad, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. His eyes flickered between Mr. Johnson, the crowd, and James, who stood unwavering. The officer opened his mouth to speak, but before any words came out, another voice broke through the tense atmosphere. From the edge of the crowd, a young boy stepped forward, his eyes wide with curiosity and concern. "Why are you questioning him?" the boy asked, his innocent tone cutting through the tension. "Isn't he one of the good guys?" The question hung in the air, its simplicity striking a chord with everyone present. Daniels visibly faltered, the boy's words stirring something deep within him. He glanced at Mr. Johnson, whose steady gaze encouraged him to reflect. The crowd held its breath, sensing the fragile balance of the moment. Would Daniels choose to break free from his ingrained biases, or would fear and pride take control? The stakes had never felt higher, and the next move could change everything. Daniels took a deep breath, the boy's question echoing in his mind. The crowd watched intently, sensing a shift in the officer's demeanor. Slowly, he lowered his notepad and stepped back, his expression softening. "You're right," Daniels finally said, his voice carrying a mix of regret and determination. "I've been wrong, and I need to do better." The crowd murmured, some nodding in approval. James offered a small, understanding nod, recognizing the internal battle Daniels had just won. It seemed like the conflict was finally reaching a peaceful resolution. But just as the tension began to ease, the unexpected happened. From the edge of the street, another car pulled up, a sleek black vehicle with tinted windows. The door opened, and out stepped a man in a suit, carrying an air of authority. He introduced himself as an investigator from an internal affairs unit, explaining that they had been monitoring complaints about bias within the precinct. He revealed that Daniel's behavior had been under review, and this incident had been a pivotal test. The crowd gasped, realizing the full weight of the moment. Daniels, now visibly shaken, listened as the investigator commended Mr. Johnson and James for their roles in helping uncover and address the issue. It wasn't just about one confrontation, it was a step towards systemic change. The unexpected twist left the crowd in awe, as they witnessed the beginning of a broader movement towards accountability and justice. The story ended not just with a resolution, but with a promise of a better future for the community. Inside the coffee shop, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to celebratory. The barista, still flustered from the earlier confrontation, couldn't help but smile as the regulars rallied around, offering not just a generous tip, but words of encouragement. The sense of community was palpable as everyone basked in the shared victory over the morning's chaos. Meanwhile, outside, Karen's day was spiraling out of control. Her outrage grew as she read the sarcastic note on her windshield, her voice rising with disbelief. The sight of the tow truck lifting her car only added to the spectacle. The crowd, now gathered at the windows and doorways, couldn't hide their amusement. Karen's attempts to reason with the security guard and the tow truck driver were futile, her protests falling on deaf ears. The arrival of the police officer marked the final blow. Karen's bravado crumbled as she accepted the traffic citation, her frustration boiling over but ultimately powerless against the unfolding events. As her car disappeared down the street, towed away, Karen's protests faded into the background, leaving behind a scene of laughter and satisfaction. For the coffee shop patrons, it was a moment of sweet karmic justice. Phones buzzed with videos capturing every detail, ensuring Karen's outburst would be remembered long after the day ended. The crowd slowly dispersed, each person feeling a little lighter, a little more connected, after witnessing a perfect reminder that no one is above the rules. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a powerful and thought-provoking story that sheds light on an important issue in our society. This story is about a Black Navy SEAL who crosses paths with a police officer harboring racial biases. What unfolds is a remarkable lesson in courage, humanity, and the transformative power of understanding. Stick around because this is a story you won't want to miss. It's not just about one man's experience, but a reminder of the change we can inspire when we challenge prejudice and promote respect. Let's get into it. This introduction focuses on the human aspect of the story, emphasizing personal growth and societal reflection without violating any content policies. It all started on an ordinary afternoon when James, a highly decorated Navy SEAL, was on his way home. He had just returned from a grueling mission overseas and was looking forward to a quiet day. As he strolled through the neighborhood, a routine police patrol car pulled up beside him. The officer, whose name was Officer Daniels, stepped out, his demeanor tense and cautious. James noticed the officer's suspicious gaze and stiff posture. Despite being dressed casually, James could feel the weight of the officer's assumptions. The exchange began with routine questions, but it quickly became clear that Daniels was operating on more than just standard protocol. James remained calm, his years of discipline and training keeping him composed, but he couldn't ignore the growing tension. What Daniels didn't realize was that he was dealing with a man who had faced far greater challenges than a simple street-side encounter. James knew this wasn't just about him. It was about something much bigger. As the conversation continued, James could see the conflict brewing within Officer Daniels. It was more than just a routine stop. There was an unspoken judgment in every question, every glance. James answered calmly, his voice steady, but inside he couldn't help but reflect on how often he had faced similar situations. Despite his service and sacrifices, moments like these reminded him that some still saw him through a narrow lens. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels was wrestling with his own internal struggle. Raised in a small town with little exposure to diversity, his perceptions had been shaped by years of stereotypes and misinformation. But as he stood there, something about James didn't fit the narrative Daniels had always believed. There was a quiet strength in James, a confidence that hinted at a story much deeper than the surface. At the same time, a small crowd began to gather, sensing the tension. Some watched with concern, others with curiosity. Among them was a young woman who had witnessed similar encounters before, but this one felt different. She could sense that this was more than just a confrontation. It was a pivotal moment, one that could either escalate or serve as a turning point for everyone involved. James could feel the weight of the situation intensifying. His calm demeanor remained, but he was acutely aware of the stakes. Officer Daniels, on the other hand, seemed caught in a whirlwind of doubt and defensiveness. The officer's questions became sharper, almost as if he was trying to justify his actions, but James didn't waver. He knew that any wrong move could escalate things, and he wasn't about to let that happen. The crowd grew larger, the murmurs rising as people speculated about what might unfold. The young woman who had been watching stepped forward, her eyes locked on James and Daniels. She couldn't stay silent any longer. "Officer, is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice steady but firm. Daniels hesitated, glancing at her and then back at James. The tension was palpable, hanging in the air like a storm ready to break. James decided it was time to speak up. His voice, calm but commanding, broke the silence. "Officer, I served this country for years. I fought battles you can't imagine. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to go home." His words were simple, but they carried a power that made everyone pause. Daniels was visibly conflicted, the crowd holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The moment felt like it could tip in any direction, and all eyes were on Daniels, wondering if he would finally see beyond his biases or let them dictate his actions.